Hey kids, this is Jonesing with Jeff Drake. I'm your host, Jeff Drake, and this is just another one of those little things I've been doing. Somebody asked me a little while back on Facebook about, they wanted me to talk a little bit about the Joneses, Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols connection. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I don't know if he'll ever be on the podcast. He might be. I don't know what, I really don't know what he's doing, etc. So anyway, I'll talk a little bit about, how the Joneses came to know Steve Jones and what that was all about. I first met Steve Jones, it must have been 1980. Yeah, the Joneses were on tour in New York, and we played this little place called the A7, which was down on the Lower East Side, 7th Street and Avenue A, something like that. And Steve showed up there because he saw the name the Joneses. He thought that we named ourselves after him, which wasn't true. But anyway, he came to see the band. And I guess he liked us, and he talked to us a bit. And then maybe 6 months later or something, the Joneses did a show in Orange County with a band called Checkered Past, and Steve was in that band, Checkered Past. After the sound check, we were sitting at the bar, and Steve came over and sat down next to me, and we started talking. And I told him how much I loved those early Professional singles. Great band, great singles. But then when the album came out, I didn't like it as much. And he said that's because he produced those early singles, and that's why they sounded so much better, so much different. And I thought, wow, that's really great, man. Steve's a great producer. He also told me he played all the guitar on the Johnny Thunder So Alone solo album, which I don't believe that's true, but who knows? Maybe he did. So we were talking, and we started hanging out a little bit, and we found we had something in common. Me and him and Steve Houston used to like to get high together. We would hang out sometimes in Steve Houston's Volkswagen van, get loaded and stuff. We were doing a show. I don't know how Steve ended up there, but we were doing a show at this place called, I think it was called Froggies or Mr. Frogs or something like that, down in the South Bay. And Steve got up and played a couple songs with us. We did a couple Johnny Thunder songs. I think it was Born Too Loose and Chatterbox. And it was really cool to be able to, play with Steve. I was kind of in awe, because the Sex Pistols were such a favorite of mine when I was a teenager. And, here we are playing with Steve Jones. Anyway, so we hung out with him a little bit. And then we talked about, because I thought those Professional singles sounded so good, I thought it would be great, if he could produce the Joneses, maybe the Joneses would sound like that. And then that would be really cool. So I asked him, and he said, well, it was a 6-song EP. He wanted $1,500. And back in 1980, this would have been 1982, 1983. $1,500 was $1,500. That was a lot of money that we didn't have. And so we said, we can't afford that. So as time got closer to the recording, he would say, well, I'll do it for 1,000. And you were like, we can't afford that either. And then he's like, well, what about 500? And then, we're like, we're broke, man. We don't work or anything. So anyway, so it got to be the day of the recording, and Steve called and said, hey, man, if somebody just drives up to Hollywood and gets me loaded, gives me a ride, I'll come down there. I'll produce your record for free. And we were already in the recording studio about to start, and everybody's like, you want to go pick up Steve? It was like an hour each way to Hollywood. We got to get him loaded. And so we didn't. And, probably the biggest mistake we ever made, that was the Criminals EP we were talking about, which turned out to be a good record. But if we would have had Steve Jones producing it, it would have sounded great, and it would have had his name on it. And so maybe probably a lot of people would have bought it just, for that. I remember well, that's another story. So yeah, so we ended up not using Steve. He didn't produce the record. I've regretted it ever since. I probably should have went and picked him up. Bad move on our part. Anyway, so that's my Steve Jones story. I haven't really had any contact with him since then. I don't remember why we stopped hanging out and stuff. We probably found a new connection. Anyway, that's all I got. Bye, kids.